Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Tevis-Finn, recording from room 114. Welcome to Imperialism Part 3, the Spanish-American War. And I recommend following the guided notes because I'd like you guys to reflect where I have things kind of starred. And also I do provide you some of this information so you don't have to write down everything. But let's get started. I'm opening up with the flag from Spain. To kind of talk about the fact that Spain did have a vast empire, and Cuba and Puerto Rico were Spain's fill-in last colonies in the Western Hemisphere. Cubans had a long history of revolting, so the position that the U.S. took is that they really saw Spain as tyrants. And so I'd like you to look at this, guys. Remember, we're practicing point of view. So please, put down how Spain is portrayed in this cartoon. Background is very important, guys. The sugarcane plantations in Cuba. By the mid-1800s, I want you guys to note that Cuba produced almost 1/3 of the world's sugar. So, guys, Cuba is very valuable to Spain. So here's some of the information I provided for you on your guided notes. It's important to note, guys, that in 1868 the Cubans rebelled and declared their independence. They started guerrilla war against the Spanish. But within 10 years, I need you guys to put down that the movement did collapse. It wasn't united, they didn't have funding, and many rebels did flee to the U.S. It's important to note, guys, that until 1886, I think I have here, they enslaved 1/3. It's huge of amount of people. 1/3, guys, put down of the Cubans were slaves on these plantations. That's a good bullet to put down. So as I said, it's very valuable, a huge economic investment. Spain does then abolish slavery, but the struggle continues. So once Spain abolishes slavery, I have here a picture of the Cuban rebels, that were trying to get their independence. We have a leader emerge, and I want you to know him. So I put down his name, Jose Marti, and then I do want you guys to write down some things about him. He's a writer and a poet. He's the leader of the rebels. He lived in New York, right, which was a center for many Cuban exiles. Guys, by the 1800s, he was able to really unite the exiled Cubans. So there in the United States, guys, he could raise money, purchase weapons, and train his troops. So the next bullet's important, guys. By the 1890s, here we go with economic. U.S. and Cuba had strong economic ties. So you guys can put down that Cuba exported its sugar to the U.S. And so in turn, guys, put down the U.S. invests money in their plantations, building mines and railroads. So this is good information on the slide and on your notes, guys. The U.S. passes a new tariff on sugar, which really does hurt Cuba's economy. And so this kind of sparks the rebellion. The rebellion is renewed. So with his people suffering, guys, the next bullet is Marti leads the rebels and dies in the struggle. I need you to put down there, though, that the rebels seize control of the eastern part of the island and declare independence. And they establish the Republic of Cuba in September of 1895. This is their year of independence, just like 1776 for us. Viva Cuba Libre! I have on your notes, guys, that I want you to describe a Cuba Libre cartoon. I'm going to show you that in class. They actually, believe it or not, use those images to advertise for Cuban rum. So, yeah, I have some strong opinions about that and the misrepresentation of this rebellion movement to sell alcohol. But let's remind me to show you that in class. So you guys can skip that part on the guided notes. But let's get right into independence. I have down there on the notes that this is their key year of independence. But guys, this is the actual taking place. They're raising their flag for Cuba. So this is huge for Cubans. So how do the Spanish react? Well, they send this general. His nickname is the Butcher. So guys, I gave you his name. It's General uh, Valeriano, and I want you to put his nickname down. For his nickname is the Butcher. For he is known for his harsh and vicious reputation. Oh, sorry, his last name is Weiler. So Valeriano Weiler. But here's his nickname. I want you to know, guys. Put down. He is sent to Cuba to put down the rebellion with 20,000 troops. So I put down in your notes, guys, that Spain promised autonomy to the Cubans, right? The right to their own government. Only put down if they remained part of the Spanish Empire. So guys, put down that the Cubans responded, viciously. They raided the sugar plantations. They tore up railroad tracks. And guys, put down, oh, I put it down for you, sorry. They hoped to lure the Americans into war, right? Because the Americans had invested in their country. So, this general, pictured here, guys, Weiler, responds by herding hundreds of thousands of Cubans into reconcentration camps. Tens of thousands, guys, please fill in, die of starvation and disease. You need to note that this enraged the American public. So I'm going to show you some pictures of the victims. I apologize, they are harsh, but his nickname is the Butcher. So please put any reaction down on your guided notes. Here is one of Weiler's victims. And here are the bodies piled up. The point of Weiler's, his purpose was to, separate the rebels from the villagers. Here are some children. So please react and put down that on your notes, guys. This is a great review slide to make sure you guys, wrote down the relationship between Cuba and the U.S. They really did hope to lure us in. But those camps, those pictures I showed you, really did put down, spark U.S. sympathy. And so President Cleveland, though, at the time, is against the war. So you want to put down for the bullet, America supports Cuba, that, though they supported Cleveland, did not want to get involved. We were trying not to get entangled, and so he remained neutral. And then, guys, your next bullet, you want to, I put down that yet many Americans did support the rebels. Why? Well, they compared it, put down to the American Revolution, right? It's their cause of liberty. And so, guys, put down that some, smuggle guns from Florida to help them. And here is how Weiler is portrayed. All right, guys, the next thing I want to go over is yellow journalism. So it's another way that we become involved in this international affair. So it's sensationalism. It's outrageous stories to bend the truth. So I want you to define yellow journalism. And then I gave you guys two examples. I gave you their names on the guided notes and here on this slide. So I want you to write down. So for William Randolph Hearst, you want to put down he's the lead editor of the New York Journal. And so his reports were of the Spanish feeding their Cuban prisoners to sharks and dogs. So really, exaggerating the atrocities. And then, guys, I gave you the name of Joseph Pulitzer. I want you to know him as the lead editor, put down, of the New York World. And his stories described Cuba with blood everywhere, blood on the roads and on the doorstops. So another example of yellow journalism. Okay, so I put down on your notes that it's trying to sway public opinion. These are the nation's major newspapers reporting, and they're competing for readers on how the Spanish are treating the Cubans. So, guys, another good word I want you to review and define is jingoism. So, jingoism is extreme or aggressive nationalism, and it caused many Americans to come to the aid of Cuba. And so I like to use these examples to show you these are the two newspapers that are reporting on the news, the events coming out of Cuba. And so there's both the World and the New York Journal. So this title is The U.S. Gets Closer. So guys, for President McKinley, I want you guys to put down that he did not want to get involved. So he said it would be too costly. Um, I did put down for you guys on your notes that he did ask the Spanish that, if the U.S. could help negotiate an end to the war. And then if that was denied, then we would get involved. So, it's kind of a way to say, oh, we might get involved. What Spain does, guys, fill in, is Spain removes General Weyler and does offer them autonomy. But I put down for you guys the rebels refuse this offer. There were actually even Spanish loyalists, people in Cuba that are loyal to Spain as the mother country, and they're upset at Spain's, concessions to the rebels. And so they begin, I put a blank there for you guys, so they begin rioting in Havana. And this is another spark to know. All right, guys, so after the rioting, McKinley responds. He tries to protect the Americans. Remember, we have Americans there, businesses. So he sends the USS Maine, put down in case of evacuation. So this is sent. Another kind of spark that leads us into this conflict is the Delome letter. So guys, I want you to put down on your guided notes that I have down that February 1898, the Journal prints an intercepted letter from a Cuban agent written by Henrique, and I want you to fill out his last name. It's Delome. He's the Spanish ambassador to the U.S., who, described the president as weak and a bidder for admiration for the crowd. So here's the actual, there's Delome, and there's the letter that was intercepted, insulting our president and really stirring up jingoism. All right, an important date is February 15th, 1898. I put on your notes, guys. The USS Maine mysteriously explodes and kills 266 American soldiers. Congress then, responds and gives McKinley, you guys can fill out, authority to expel Spain from Cuba. Remember the Maine, it becomes a rallying cry. And Congress, guys, fill in, authorizes $50 million for war preparations. So there is a lot of jingoism pressure. April 11th, he asked for the use of force. April 19th, we demand Spain withdraw, and we proclaim Cuba's independence. And the big one, guys, is April 24th. Spain declares war on the United States. And we will talk about this in class, but here is how the explosion of the USS Maine is illustrated at the time. Look carefully, please. And so the title up here is important, The Splendid Little War. So guys, I put that on your notes. It was said by both Secretary of State John Hay and Teddy Roosevelt, who was a huge advocate for going to war. But I do want you guys to know that it's the first time in 50 years that we're now at war with another country. And, though it's small and it didn't last long, please put down that it did change the U.S. position in the world balance of power. I have on our guided notes that I want you to look at some images and propaganda. That will be some classwork that we'll do. But I do want you guys, before I sign off, to kind of go back through and look at some of these sparks, the way I describe them, and put them in order of significance in terms of starting the Spanish-American War. So you have both the Cuba Rebellion, Cuba Libre, the American Press, the Delome Letter, and the explosion of the USS Maine. So guys, rate those in order of importance 1 to 4 so you're ready for class tomorrow. This is Mrs. Tevis-Finn signing off.